Hi guys, before you get into the next amazing conversation with another amazing guest, I just wanted to tell you I have now moved over to Substack. So it's the never settle podcast.substack.com. The reason I've done that is because of the increase in censorship I am finding on YouTube, and I'm worried that maybe one day they're going to deplatform me. So please head over to Substack and subscribe. I'm very new into it. It's growing. There will be a lot more content on there going forwards and hope to see you over there. Well, hello, lovely listeners. Welcome, viewers. Today I have back again the wonderful Iain Clifford. Um, the reason Ian's back on so soon is because I tell you what, guys, this will be made into a blockbuster movie at some point. Forget The Big Short. This is like the story of the goddamn century. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but what Ian specifically wants to focus on today is what's going on in his membership and how certain people's actions have completely jeopardized the members, me included. So I'm pretty pissed off. Thanks, guys, because we were about to get our first monies coming through, and it's going to be delayed again because of the actions of a handful of individuals, not because of Ian. But I'm not going to talk any more into it. Welcome, Ian. Thank you. You must be absolutely bloody knackered right now with all the stuff you are trying to sort out. But welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Mel. I really hope that I wouldn't have to tell a story like this. But I feel compelled to tell it because, the truth needs to come out, and there's a lot of misinformation swirling around, which often happens when people don't know they're not close enough to the detail to really figure out what's happened, why it's happened, and what's gonna happen next. Which is where our members are focusing their attention is, what's going to happen now because they really want the result,
Yeah.
and they've been waiting, longer than they were expecting to wait for the result. And I'm waiting for my result. You're waiting for yours. And we were right on the brink of getting it. And, this is often what happens is like just before, the darkness is, I often say the darkness is more, there's more darkness just before the dawn, if you know that saying. So I
Yeah.
think this is what we're experiencing here.
Yeah. This
Um,
this this is a
I,
reflection of lots of other things that are going on, I think, at the moment as well, not just within, the Republic of Old Souls, but in people's personal journeys right now. The dark seems to be off the scale at the moment in terms of what they are doing to just, innocent people. Um, but I do just want to say before you start, um, it's very easy to believe the bullshitters in this world, especially when you're feeling hard done to. For example, when we're talking about Matrix, which is now Republic of Old Souls, some people have been waiting maybe 2, 3 years for their payments, right? Because things had to keep changing, the process wasn't working. You were getting knockbacks, you had to tweak things. And people are like, yeah, yeah, we just keep hearing it's another, we've had to do this, we've had to do that. And all it is a load of bullshit, and then that has fed Ian's a fraudster and all of that sort of stuff. And we know there's other people stoking that fire as well. Um,
mm,
and I'm a member and I've been in that situation and I've felt those things over the last couple of years as well. Because I'm closer to understanding a lot more now. And without knowing the full details, it's easy. So I'm just saying to people watching that might be in the same situation as me, it's easy to think this is a load of bullshit. This is just another story to get Ian out of more delays, or he's going to run off into the sunset with all of our money and all the rest of it. There is so much to this, guys. And if you're interested, listen up because honestly, I totally understand now what's been happening, what Ian's had to go through, and just how much he's doing to save all of us, in terms of our recoupments, because a handful of people have decided they want them or they want to take control of them, which is completely screwing us all over. So anyway, over to you.
Well, I guess, that all stories need to start somewhere near the beginning. And I'm not going to go all the way to the beginning, otherwise we'd be here longer than I'm sure the viewers want. But if we start the story in June of 2023, so here I am, and I've said, you may already know this part of the story. I've made a documentary called Entrapment by Design, which is the FCA's strategy. It's not just the FCA, it's the entire Crown. So it's not just the FCA. They're one of a smorgasbord of Crown actors that wanted to silence me. Now, in the early part of 2023, I started talking about recouping abandoned credit. And I'm doing webinars and I'm public and I'm explaining that there is a way to recoup bank payments, mortgages, any kind of credit really, but we're focusing on bank payments and mortgages. And if you're interested in that, if you're not already aware of this, I wrote a book recently called The Banks Are Using Your Credit and How to Recoup It. And it's a 12-chapter ebook that explains it all. And I think everybody should know about it because it is a game changer. But the information hasn't all been learned in one go. Like all of these things, you don't download a book from somewhere and within a few hours know exactly how the whole system works. It's deliberately complex, and there's many ways to approach the subjects, and most of them don't work. So if you go on YouTube and look into, people like Chris Hauser and a load of others that have talked about, oh yeah, you can recoup your credit, 1099A and all of these things. Many people who've been tuned in to credit recoupment have tried things that don't work. People like Brandon Williams, for example, have tried things that don't work, so they step away from it. Well, I'm not like that. If I know that something can be made to work, I stay the course and find how to do it. And this has been one of the more complex things to figure out. I've done quite a few complex things in my time, but this one, it's up there. It's in the top 3 of the more complex things that I've figured out. So I'm starting to talk about credit recoupment in June of 2023. And then suddenly there's 13 police at my door, and it's obvious what's going to happen. They're going to arrest me and they're going to take me away, which is what happened. And I go along with it because everything seems kosher in terms of the warrant signed. There's no point fighting these guys. I'm never going to overpower 13 police. And the interesting thing was they actually brought a lawyer with them, which was hilarious. And I'm sure that will raise a few eyebrows because it raised mine. They actually brought a lawyer to my front door to say, would you like to be represented by this lawyer here? And I said, absolutely not. You can go right now, I said. All right. So we all know if we know what they're trying to do there, they're trying to get the joinder, they're trying to get, me to say, oh, she can, because it was a lady lawyer, she can represent me. And then they'd hang me out to dry, which, for those who understand the way the system works, you'll get what I mean about joinder, and being represented by a lawyer is the last thing you ever want. If you're going to stand your ground, under a superior jurisdiction. You're not going to win that one if you've appointed a lawyer. So she went, and I got taken to the police investigation centre in Portsmouth, which is the nearest city to where I was living at the time, in the south of England. And the order for arrest says that there is an investigation into whether my organisation and certain corporations involved with my organisation and Iain Clifford Stamp, which is the body corporate, not Iain Clifford the man, maybe providing financial services without a license. So that's where it starts. Forget all this nonsense about Iain was arrested for fraud or money laundering. That's a complete fabrication. The Order 34, 2023, and you can go and look it up online, it will tell you that the order, it's called Order 34, 2023, Southwark Crown Court, is about the FCA investigating whether my organisation needs a licence to provide the remedies that we provide. Now, the FCA already know that I don't need a licence, and nor does anybody else in my organisation. But that's not why they got the order. They got the order because then, whilst they're investigating, they can lock you down. So if you link this to what could be happening very soon with digital ID, if they want to investigate some activity that they say you might be involved in, they can use a court order whilst they're investigating and literally lock you down. So all your bank accounts get frozen, you can't travel, all the things that they can do to stop you and mobilize you, right? And if you know anything about the Canadian truckers from, I think it's 2022, when they were, protesting about the illness, alleged illness, how did they stop those truckers? They blocked all their bank accounts, froze all their bank accounts. So that is what they do if they want to immobilize you, and that's what they did to me. So in June 2023, I get taken into the police investigation centre. I'm there 13 hours being interrogated by two senior FCA officers who never asked me one question about what are you doing, Iain, that needs a license? Not one question in 13 hours.
So what did they ask you?
Because they asked me about my website, they asked me about the straw man, they asked me about, common law, they asked you about everything other than what they've arrested you for. And I kept telling them, when are you going to ask me about needing a financial services license to do what I do? Now, I'm an unusual character in that I actually know my way around the FCA's rule books and their procedures and their principles, because I was regulated for 35 years. So you have to know that stuff. You can't operate a big financial services company unless you know your way around their regulatory handbook. And I do. And I 100% know that nothing that we do in the Private Members Association, which formerly was called Matrix Freedom, has anything to do with regulations. You don't need any regulatory coverage. And I'll tell you why. Everybody who joins a Private Members Association, and they waive statutory protection. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that what the FCA speculated was that we were offering a claims management service, or maybe offering claims management and debt counselling. Well, they're very specific activities that we do not provide. Everybody who joins the PMA is self-directing their own process. So we provide an administration service that has no guarantee of an outcome. And most of what we're doing is filing tax returns from Bali to the United States. Absolutely nothing to do with the FCA, who operate exclusively in the United Kingdom. So they have absolutely no jurisdiction over tax filings done through a professional office in Bali with a fully qualified team with all the licensing to do tax filings, but those activities are nothing at all to do with the FCA. And taxes are something which the FCA do not regulate, even in the UK.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with tax regulation. That's to do with, in fact, taxes are an unregulated activity. Even HMRC don't regulate taxes. You can be a member of a chartered insurance institute, but that's just an institute. It's not a regulatory activity. Taxes are not regulated. So you can advise on tax matters. You need no license at all. So most of what we're doing is tax returns, because that's what recoupments are. They are tax returns that lead to a recoupment of credit. And everything else that the Private Members Association does, and let me break this out because it's really important, it's not one entity. So a lot of people don't understand this. They think that Matrix Freedom is one entity with a bank account, with a load of staff that work for Matrix Freedom. It's not like that. Matrix Freedom is a group of contractors that have come together to service a group of members that have come together under a Private Members Association. There is no bank account. Matrix Freedom has never had a bank account. It's an unincorporated group. And the contractors are contracted to members of Matrix Freedom. So corporations that provide administration services are members, those corporations are members of Matrix Freedom. So if you look at your contract, if you are a member, you're not signing a services contract with an entity called Matrix Freedom. No, you're employing a corporation that could be in the UK, it could be in the US, where that corporation provides an administration service. And that administration service is not a regulated activity. So you see, there's no level where the FCA has any jurisdiction here. Most of the activities are outside the UK. We're in the US or in Bali. And the activities are administration services. They're not regulated services in any way whatsoever.
So presumably you pointed this out to them at some level. And I mean, I don't want to jump ahead because obviously you want to do the timeline of things, but how on earth could they get away with what they got away with based on exactly what you've just said? They have no jurisdiction in anywhere other than the UK.
Well, you see, I knew within moments of the police standing at my door what this was about, because this is a replay. 2018, they tried something similar. They didn't send 13 police then. It all was going through the courts. They shut down. I had an algorithmic, I had 125 algorithmic trading systems that I'd developed, and I was licensing them to fund managers. The fund managers absolutely need a license to manage people's money, and using my algorithmic trading systems to do it. Well, an algorithm that's been developed by me and my IT team is not managing the money. The manager who's managing the algorithm is managing the money. Well, the FCA came to the managers who were licensing these algorithms and said that Iain may be managing the money. They closed the whole thing down. It was a very big project. It was years in development, and then it all went to court. And you can find the case. It's called UK Innovative TI versus the FCA. And I beat the FCA in the High Court. They destroyed the whole venture. It was the 7th venture in the row that they destroyed. But their playbook was to try and get a conviction for what's called the breach of the general prohibition. So the general prohibition is that if you don't have a license to practice financial services, fund management, wealth management, debt counseling, things of that type, claims management, debt adjusting, all of these things are regulated activities, providing insurance, mediation. There's a whole list of regulated activities. Fund management, which is what they were trying to pin on me, was impossible for me to have provided because it's not me that is in control of the algorithmic trading systems. It's the manager, because the manager can switch them on or switch them off. So it's about control, right? So they tried to get that on me. That didn't work, but they did destroy the whole venture. It was a big venture. It wasn't just me and a couple of managers. It was lots of fund managers who were licensing the algorithms. There was a big venture going on. It was one of my bigger ventures that I launched. And the whole thing was wiped out and destroyed. And they tried to get me under this breach of the general prohibition. They failed. I countersued against them, and I beat them in the High Court. And they really didn't like, because I wasn't even supposed to be in the High Court, because this was a regulatory High Court. And I managed to get in there, and I managed to argue the case, and the FCA lost. And I could have taken it civil and claimed damages against them, but I didn't do that. I just carried on with something else that I was working on. So this was part one, you see, of this entrapment. If they failed, they came back in 2023, 5 years later, because their playbook is really simple. It's got nothing to do with fraud. It's got nothing to do with money laundering or crime. It's all to do with mobilize Iain, silence him by putting him in jail. How can the FCA put Iain in jail? And their plan is simple. Get a court order that enables them to investigate, which they can investigate for as long as they want. Whilst they're investigating, the court order locks Iain down, freezes all of his bank accounts, freezes all of his activities. And if he breaches that order, then you can jail Iain for contempt of a court order. Now, the court order is Iain Clifford's stamp, the body corporate, not Iain Clifford, the man. So the first thing I did was serve all the papers that their court order doesn't apply to Iain, the man. It went to judicial review. So I got a judicial review of the court order on the basis that Iain Clifford, the man, is not constrained by this court order, because the court order is against the body corporate. I am not the body corporate. I was operating as the general executor over the body corporate, or some of the things I explain on my webinars. And therefore, there was no joinder between the two. And I was separate from this. Iain Clifford, the man, is not affected by the court order. But I could see that they were going to railroad it. And they did railroad. They railroaded the judicial review. And instead of me being able to attend under special appearance at the judicial review, they made a decision without there being any hearing at all. It took me months to get the judicial review granted. I got it granted. And then they made a decision. Justice Sweeting made justice. That's a laugh, isn't it?
Yep.
He made a decision that the case that I advanced had no merit, and I wasn't even there. So this is what they do. They railroaded that case so that then they could proceed with ultimately what happened in July of 2025. So you wind the clock forward 2 years. I've gone to Bali. Now, why did I go to Bali? Because the FCA have no jurisdiction in Bali. Bali's in Indonesia. How can the FCA have any weight or jurisdiction? How can Southwark Crown Court have any jurisdiction in Bali? They can't. It's impossible unless they get an Indonesian order. And they weren't going to get that because their whole strategy has no substance. Well, then you lay the next thing on top of the fact that there is no financial services being provided. They've got no evidence of any financial services being provided, but they don't need any evidence to investigate, do they? Because you can investigate for 10 years and find nothing. But during that 10 years, the court order is still active, yeah? So that was their plan, was to get me to breach the court order. Therefore, they could lock me up for contempt of the court order. And I knew that was their plan from day one. How did I know that? Because I've been looking at what they do to targeted individuals like me. What do they do to jail you? There's a certain number of playbooks that they roll out, and that's one of them. It happened to Martin Armstrong. If you Google it, if you go and look on the internet, look at the forecaster. They put him in jail for 9 years for contempt of court. Never committed any crime whatsoever. Exactly the same playbook. This is in the United States, in their system, but it's all one system, right? So I knew exactly what they were doing. That's why I went to Indonesia, because I knew that if I'd stayed in the United Kingdom, they would send the goons round and I'd be locked up in Belmarsh at some stage. You're not going to win that.
Yeah, some people would argue, Iain, and I don't know whether this was even in place at that point. Well, you've got this church envoy protection jurisdiction. So is your paperwork not working, Iain?
A lot of people might say that, but that didn't come about until 2025.
Yeah.
It came about because of this situation.
Yeah.
So that, you know, for those people who think, oh, he's not eating his own cooking, I hadn't created that jurisdictional shield until 2025. We're talking 2023 here. I learned that jurisdictional shield because of this problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've learned everything that I know today because of the problems that they've caused me. You know, you don't know all these things until you have to solve the problem. Yeah. You solve the problem, then you learn along the journey how to solve the problem. That's what I've been doing. So it starts to really heat up in about May of 2025, and I've come to North Cyprus. Well, why have I come to North Cyprus? Because North Cyprus doesn't have any extradition treaties with the United Kingdom. And it's closer for my family to come and see me because I haven't seen my family for 2 years. My friends, my family, they're all back in the UK. You know, I'm basically on my own most of the time. Don't have a big problem with it. I don't want anybody to think I'm looking for sympathy. I'm not. But it's just a consequence of trying to provide freedom to others. I've sacrificed my freedom for the freedom of the members. So I didn't need to do any of this stuff. I've got capabilities. I can look after myself. I don't need to carry around thousands and thousands of members and go up against the Crown. I chose to do that. I made a conscious decision to do it because I wanted to provide others with a remedy to their problem, well, their many problems. And I knew the pathway I was taking.
Yeah.
I chose it.
Some might
You
say
know, I'm
you're,
not asking anybody to say to me, oh, Iain, you know, we're not going to give you any sympathy because you chose this pathway. I knew what I was up against. And I'm
some,
still happy to do it now. Right?
some might say you're a crazy mofo.
Well, they might do. But what have I got to lose, right? You see, maybe this is not the right podcast for this, but we're all spirits, aren't we? We're all endless infinity soul spirits having a human experience.
Hmm.
Is any of this real? It
Yeah.
feels real. It looks real. I know who I am. I remember who I am because I did a regression in 2012. I know who I am. I don't need to worry about this bullshit because it's on a surface it's on a plane that is nothing really. It feels really like, oh my God, all these things are going to happen and it's going to be terrible or it's going to be amazing or it's going to be terrible. It's just like playing a video game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's still massively challenging when you're going through it, but I know exactly what you mean because it's just, yeah. Um,
At a much deeper level, I know what's going on, but I wasn't prepared to not use my skill because I have a skill of problem solving. I want to use that as I have been all my career to help other people who don't have that particular skill. They've got other skills, they don't have that one. So I want to use my skill. I want to do something beneficial for others because that's what I think we're here for, is to help others, right? I think we're all one and we're all here to help each other.
do you
You know, we
think
shouldn't be boring.
do you think in the earlier days your motivation was more to get back and get revenge for what they did to you, and over the last maybe 2 or 3 years it's evolved more into what we're all fighting for at different levels, in terms of this world of freedom that we all want, and just to be left the hell alone to get on and be healthy and eat decent food and drink good water and have some fun. So do you think there's been an involvement for you from the ego driving this to, yeah.
There's a blend, right? We've all got an ego. I'm not saying I'm any different from anybody else. I had a much bigger ego, I think, in the past because I was very successful. And that's the problem with success. At some level, it affects your ego, right? You strut around a bit more than you would have done before. I was very successful. I had endless wealth. I had people hanging off every word I said. It does affect you. I don't care who you are. If you've never experienced that, you won't know what I'm talking about. If you have to be experienced what I experienced, if it doesn't affect you, well, you're not human as far as I'm concerned.
Mm.
So I had more of an ego when I was very successful. I then get taken down, taken out, destroyed, your reputation's destroyed, destroyed, destroyed. But the central theme is that I don't like things. I don't like dishonor. I really, at a deep level, do not like dishonor. I mean, to me, there should be integrity. There should be honesty. There should be transparency. There should be honor. There should be integrity. All these things are very, very dear to me. And I know a lot of people are going to go, well, yeah, but you're the fraudster, aren't you? So if you think I'm a fraudster, you just don't know me. What courses through me is honor and integrity. I do not like double dealing. I don't like cheating. I don't like anything that isn't light and bright and true and reliable. All of those things to me are what the truth frequency. That's what I like. I want to resonate there. I've never knowingly lied or cheated. I probably have said things that weren't true, but I didn't knowingly do it. So that's where I am. And when I look at the system, it's full of deception. It's huge deception on every single level. And I don't like that. So I think a lot of us in this truth movement, if that's what we're going to call it, don't like the deception, do we?
No.
I don't like it. So in the early days, I thought, well, I'll show you. You lot over there are all deceiving and cheating and defrauding everyone. I don't like that, and you've done it to me. You've destroyed my world. So there was a little bit of revenge there, to be frank about it. But that wasn't really the dominant force. The dominant force was integrity.
Yeah.
Where's the fucking integrity here? It's not there. And I'm gonna try and bring some integrity into this equation. And I started off with mortgages, because the mortgage is one of the worst examples of deception you're ever going to see. It's so deceptive on every single level. And I started with that. And because I can understand where the deceptions are, I thought I could win. It's stupidly. I thought in the early days I could actually point out where the deceptions were, and the system would go, you know what, Ian, yeah, you're right. So we'll put that right for you. Well, that was never going to happen, was it, in the way I was trying to do it back then? But I tried. My intention was to try and solve people's mortgage problem. And that's what I started to do, and I tried to do it, and it's been a long journey, and I've learned huge amounts from trying to solve that problem and a number of other problems. But if we come back to the FCA's playbook, you see, in May of 2025, it starts to really heat up, and they are now trying to go for a conviction, right? So they're now saying that, Ian, you have breached the order, and they've got some bullshit evidence, and basically you have to come back to the UK and stand in a courtroom at Southwark Crown Court and argue that you hadn't breached the order. That is the order that they got in 2023. Well, there was no way I was going to do that, because that's a trap if ever I've seen it. So I stayed in North Cyprus, and I then discovered something which I thought at the time was going to break the case up and they'd have to go away. And that is that the FCA's prosecutor, and you're not going to believe me until you actually find out this to be true, does not exist. Is a fiction. So there's a guy who's named in all the paperwork, Alistair, Alistair Mackenzie, who allegedly is a prosecutor for the FCA, who does not exist anywhere in any register, in any employee role, in anywhere. Now, for those who don't get what that means, The FCA is being given powers under the Financial Services and Markets Act of 2000 to prosecute citizens who breach the general prohibition, meaning that they might need a license and they haven't got one, or to prosecute under that Financial Services and Markets Act those that breach an order that stems from the Financial Services and Markets Act. And they have to be a prosecutor. They can't just be some guy down the road, or they bring in a lawyer, or they bring in a barrister. No, they have to be an employee of the FCA to prosecute.
I'm seeing similarities here with the council and the magistrates' court. That is all smoke and mirrors. The council are running the hired room. The council are running the paperwork that comes out to people pretending to be from the court. It's the same
Yep,
thing, isn't it?
it is the same thing. And what you realise is that the body corporate, Iain Clifford stamp, is registered to the Crown. So and that body corporate's on the Monopoly Board. It's on this artificial monopoly board, and it's controlled by them. It's theirs. So they can do what they want to it because it's theirs, right? So this is the big thing that a lot of people haven't realized, that fighting against the Crown or the system when they own the system is not going to work.
Yeah.
I know that. I already knew that. But in their system, if they don't have a prosecutor, how can a prosecutor that doesn't exist prosecute Iain Clifford Stamp, who's their body corporate? It doesn't work, does it? How can a non-existent prosecutor advance a prosecution? Now, interestingly, the Order 34, 2023 is granted what's called ex parte, which means that no one is there apart from the FCA and the judge. I'm not there.
It's not
I
biased
didn't
at
even know.
all.
Yeah, surprise, surprise, I'm not there. The judicial review, they decide, Justice Sweeting decides there's no merit in my case, where I'm saying I'm a living man, and this order is not against the living man, it's against the body corporate, which is yours, by the way. They make that decision again, I'm not there. So then there's a hearing in July, early in July in 2025, and I'm not going to go. So I send in an attorney in fact, which is a fellow called David Ayerst. Now, David Ayerst wasn't there to argue with them because bless him, he's not capable to do that. He doesn't understand the law like I do. I gave him all the documents that had already been served on the court just to record the fact that he'd served the documents in the courtroom as well as they'd already been served in the mail. This was his function, not to argue, not to go toe to toe with the FCA's barrister or anything like that, just to make sure that the documents that I'm saying, there's no prosecutor, this court is not a legitimate court, there's no case against a living man, the judicial review has been railroaded, it's not a decision that anybody should rely upon because I was supposed to be there. I wasn't given a fair trial. It's a breach of human rights. And the big one, you don't have any evidence of financial services being provided. And 500 of the Matrix Freedom members have sent a witness statement to the court to say that they've never been offered claims management or debt counselling services. And they're putting that in witness evidence to the judge. The very nature of this investigation, 2 years later, that the FCA still have no evidence of any financial services being provided that need a license, and 500 witness statements delivered to the court that says we've never been offered any financial services that require a license. That's the big one. No prosecutor, no legitimate court, no case against a living man, and no evidence of any financial services being provided. And yet still, they prevailed. They still went forward. So that was the first hearing. Then there was another hearing. And in the second of the hearings, David Ayres went in as the attorney in fact. And I wanted him to get the matter as a court of record. Now, contrary to what the idiot that calls himself Simon Goldberg or the Spaniard wants to say, the guy is a complete and utter idiot. He says, oh, you can't position your case under a court of record because you're supposed to have done that before. Well, have a look at the law, Simon. You can invoke a court of record whenever you fucking like. I get a bit emotional when it comes to our dear friend, the Spaniard. So I tried to invoke a court of record with all the right documents, with all the right procedures. I'd already noticed the court prior to that that's what I wanted. And it is your right as a living man, as is your right to have lots of other constitutional rights as a living man. And at that stage, I had separated the joinder between the body corporate and the living man. So they should have granted the court of record. But as soon as David Ayres put that paperwork anywhere near the judge, 7 ushers came and literally carried David out of the courtroom so that he couldn't put the paperwork. They already knew what I was going to do because I'd served notice.
7 ushers or 7 security staff?
Well, they're whatever they want to call them. They're henchmen, aren't they? They're like centurions that are there to guard the judge, you know.
Yeah.
So David gets literally carried out the courtroom so that I can't invoke my right of a court of record because you have to do it in a certain way, and that was prevented. So then the next thing that happens is they issue a sentence against Iain Clifford Stamp, the body corporate, for, and get this is hilarious, right? So allegedly in the sentence, and you can go and read it because it's online, Iain Clifford Stamp, the body corporate, has spent 30% of the funds that were frozen by the Order 34/2023.
How did you manage to do that?
How did I manage to do that then? When they're all frozen in the UK banks? It's a bit interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you spend frozen funds? Because that was their reasoning and justification for breaching the order, right? How could I spend funds that are frozen? I'd still like the answer to that. Put your answers on a postcard.
Presumably they,
you know?
presumably they gave you the documented evidence of your spending, Iain. No?
Well, they talk about accounts that are nothing to do with the UK, that are outside of their jurisdiction.
That are not frozen.
But they're not frozen and they're nothing to do with the order.
Yeah.
But apparently I've spent 30% of the funds, which is impossible to do. So you've got no case because there's no regulated activity. You've got no prosecutor. You've got no legitimate court. You've got no case against the living man. You've got 500 witness statements that say no financial services were ever offered to the members. And then you've got some fabricated evidence that Iain Clifford, the man, has spent 30% of the funds which are frozen by their order. And that is Order 34/2023 in a nutshell. So for those who say, well, you know, what happened to your envoy shield then, Iain? Why didn't that work? Well, it did work because I'm still free. And the reason it worked was because it enables me to go to the European Court of Human Rights as an envoy, as a church envoy, and go to the International Criminal Court in The Hague as a church envoy, which I never could have done before because you have to exhaust all court venues in the country that the body corporate's registered to before you can go to the Strasbourg Human Rights Court as a church envoy or the International Criminal Court at The Hague as a church envoy. And there's one more piece of the jigsaw which I haven't put in, and they actually made a big mistake with this, In 2024, I was trying to sue a media company called Open Democracy, who'd published a story about Iain the fraudster, who's defrauded some woman called Angela Musso, who I never met. I didn't even know her. I've never received any funds from her, but allegedly, according to her, she paid me money and I didn't give her the services that she had paid for. Well, I didn't know who she was. I've never met her. I've never received any money from her. I don't even know whether she was a member of the Matrix Freedom Organization, but she certainly didn't pay me anything. And Open Democracy ran this story, and I was suing them for libel. I was also up against capital home loans in a fraudulent mortgage. Now, both of those cases were reversed, and I suddenly became the defendant. When I say I, the body corporate suddenly became the defendant. And then they issued what's called a civil constraint order.
So you had
So
a libel case out and then a case against Capital Homes. So you were the claimant,
I was the claimant, yeah.
but then somehow you became the defendant.
It was all switched round. This is the High Courts. This is the King's Bench High Court. Suddenly, I became the defendant, and my paperwork is nonsensical. I always use that one. Your paperwork's nonsensical.
Yeah,
Your
I've seen
case
that
is
word.
it's called the vexatious case. It's nonsensical. None of it makes any sense. My writing is fairly good. I'm pretty good at writing stuff, and anybody who's read my stuff hopefully would agree with that. I don't write random nonsense. I actually write quite logically. And but according to them, it was all nonsensical. And both of my cases were vexatious, which means that you've got no merit. It's all a load of nonsense, and you're wasting their time. Well, they turned them round, and then they issued a civil constraint order, which means, for those who don't know, that Iain Clifford Stamp, the body corporate, is now prevented from issuing any case in the UK judiciary system, either as a claimant or even as a defendant.
So you can never
So,
once again go to court and bring a case.
no,
Ever, ever, ever.
what? Never ever. So that was in 2024, in the middle of this Order 34 2023. Now you see so they take away your right to defend yourself. So anybody out there who thinks you've got rights, I'm telling you, you've got no rights, because I've been through it, right? So if you think that you've got rights, you have none. Because the living man woman is the agent in their system, the agent for the body corporate that is owned by them, controlled by them. They do what they want. They do anything they want. They make it up as they go along to suit their agenda, and you're never going to beat them in that system. If I can't beat them, guys, you're not going to be able to beat them. I tried everything that's known to man to beat them, and I lost. And I didn't lose, but I didn't win in their system. I won because I'm here, and I won because I learned. But all those people who are going in courtrooms thinking they're going to beat this lot, they're just not. The game is too rigged against you. You've got to play smarter.
Yeah.
You've got to take away their jurisdiction. That's the only way you can ever win. And it's not an offensive thing. It's a shield. It's a defense, not an offense. There's lots of people out there with an offense strategy that's never going to work.
So obviously this is leading up to what's currently happened at the Republic of Old Souls. So Iain, what the hell has been going on?
Well, what's been going on is the weaponization of the FCA conviction and Order 34 2023. So a number of individuals in my organization decided that they would use Order 34 2023 partly through fear and partly through greed. So in order to enable the membership to get recoupments of their bank payments and their mortgages, I had created a structure of 35 trustees that operated in the United States system with properly appointed trustees of nearly 3,000 individual trusts. So each trust is a member's trust where they're going to be recouping the credit through an international trust. So all of that infrastructure was set up. At the end of 2024, best part of 3,000 individual trusts were set up, 35 trustees appointed to those 3,000 trusts to operate in the United States system as a trustee, tick all the boxes, and then banking. So when the IRS send was originally going to be checks, but now it's ACH or Fedwire, they're sending the checks to those trusts for the trustees who've got a bank account in the name of the trust, and they're the appointed trustee, to receive the funds. And that structure, took some time to set up. I had to recruit all the trustees, organize it all, get all the arrangements in place, and then all of the filings. So that's all of the tax filings that are going to generate these recoupments are all done underneath those trusts with the appointed trustee, everything transparent, everybody knowing what they're doing. And in January of 2025, I appointed a fiduciary whose name is Amy Sanger to operate the trust group. So she was the head of the trustee group to basically manage the information flow to the trustees, to hold regular meetings with them, because, like in any group, you have to have clear information, lots of meetings, people need to do things. The trustees didn't need to do very much because all the filing is done centrally, but they needed to know what was going on. They needed to have a transparency on what their role was and all the things that you can probably imagine. So Amy was appointed as the head of the trustee group in January 2025. And because I wanted to operate a company in the United States as a service provider, I created a private trust and set up a company, and Amy was appointed the shareholder and director. It's much easier to run a US company if you are operating as a shareholder director as a US resident, because the banks don't like opening accounts for non-resident aliens, as they're called. So if you want to operate a company in the United States, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, you appoint someone as a shareholder and a director, and you hold the company in private trust. It's perfectly legitimate. It's called nominees. Lots of companies operate on a nominee basis. That's what I did. And then, because we were making very, very good progress with the recoupments, I created MTRXF Ministry Trust. So this is one of the ministries, church ministries, that was going to operate the Freedom Plan and provide grants to our members, etc., which we'll perhaps come back to later. And I've got companies in Bali that have got fairly significant funds in them, which is the reserve to operate our very large infrastructure. So we have 60 contractors, offices in multiple countries, lots and lots of costs. So contrary to what the idiots out there want to believe, who say, oh yeah, Iain's had £14 million since he started this private members association. No, because about 12.5 million of that has gone out in costs, because you can't run an organization of this size without paying people their contractors, paying for office overheads and all the other overheads that you pay for. So Amy was brought in as the trustee of MTRXF Ministry Trust and got an EIN number, because you need an EIN number. You've got a trust indenture, and I signed the trust indenture with Amy in February 2025. I'm the grantor, so I'm the head honcho. Amy's the appointed trustee, and Amy can go and get bank accounts and etc. in the United States because she's there. She's got all the credentials as a resident, the Amy Sanger body corporate this is. And there we go. Now, unbeknown to me, in April of 2025, Amy Sanger had created a trust, a US domestic trust, with exactly the same name as my Indonesian company, apart from two words. at the end of the name of the company's ministry trust. And she transferred nearly $700,000 from the Indonesian company to this newly created trust. And then from there, she transferred it to MTRXF Ministry Trust. Now, MTRXF Ministry Trust, as far as I'm concerned, I am the head honcho. I control that trust. As the founder, as the principal, it should be me. And by the way, for all those people out there thinking, oh, wasn't that a high risk thing to do, Ian, because of the FCA? No, because the FCA have zero jurisdiction in the United States. And there's nothing in Order 34, 2023, that says I can't be a grantor of a trust. And that is Ian the man, not Iain Clifford Stamp, the body corporate, as a grantor of a trust that operates as a ministry in the United States.
So
no prohibition at all.
So she transferred it into a trust that she'd set up, but then
she transfers it to the trust that I thought I was the head honcho of.
Yeah.
That transpires that she had created a trust indenture, a secret trust indenture, in January 2025. That the banks and there's gold, silver, as banks, they believe that Amy is the head honcho because she's given a trust indenture where she is the grantor, responsible party, and the trustee.
Right.
So I'm not even there. I'm not featured anywhere in the documents that Amy's given to the banks to open up various bank accounts and a gold and silver account, which substantially went up in value since April. If you look in the gold and silver values have skyrocketed since then.
There'll be some people. There'll be some people sat there thinking, "Well, surely, Ian, this is your baby. Surely you would have noticed on documents, blah blah blah. How did this How did this slip through the net?"
Well, because all of the bank accounts are in the name of MTRXF Ministry Trust. Exactly what they should be in. And I've got a trust indenture signed with me and Amy and witnesses where I am the head honcho. So I don't have any other information. I don't know that she's presented a secret trust to the banks. Yeah. I'm only presented with the documents that evidence what I'm expecting to see, which is I'm the head honcho and Amy's got no power to close bank accounts, transfer funds without my authority. I didn't know that she had a secret trust document, and I didn't know that she'd created a domestic trust to move the funds from my Indonesian company to MTRXF Ministry Trust. I thought that transfer was direct from the Indonesian company to the trust in the United States, where I am the head honcho, which we were going to use for the benefit of, the Freedom Plan, financing the organization as a reserve for the organization. So what I've done, in case you don't understand this, I have made my company's reserve available into MTRXF Ministry Trust to finance the overheads of the private members association and to put it in gold and silver as a reserve, because ultimately it's going to be used for the Freedom Plan. Then what happens is we get to September of 2025 and Amy Sanger had been refusing. I'm going to praise you this bit down because there's a 3-month story here, which I'm not going to go into all the detail. But basically, Amy Sanger is not cooperating with our head of operations, Sean Benny, who'd been brought in by me to make sure that all of the operations are working smoothly for the benefit of the members. Now, in June, we start to get tax transcripts. That's wages and tax transcripts from the IRS, which evidence that recoupments are waiting to be drawn down and paid into the trust. And by the way, today we have just under $300 million of confirmed wages and tax transcripts. The IRS don't publish these things unless they've ticked everything off their list, and these are pretty much confirmed as recoupments, right? So for all those people out there that are going to say, yeah, but nobody's had them check yet, so it's not really. That's because there is a pathway to the check or to the Fedwire or ACH, and we were advanced on that pathway. Amy's not cooperating, and then we have Amy who's broken down on an audio message, sent me an audio message early in September. She's having a breakdown, blah, blah, blah. So I asked Sean Benny to speak with Amy, and they have a meeting. It's all recorded. And Amy's saying, yeah, she's worried that Iain's been convicted by the FCA. I'd already explained to Amy that the FCA have no jurisdiction in the United States, and I wouldn't put her in harm's way. But if she's at all worried, then we'll replace her with another trustee, because we have lots of US members that would do that and without any problem at all. And then there was a meeting. There's a meeting between myself, Angela Clarkson, Sean Benny, Amy Sanger. It's all recorded, where she's saying that she's feeling a bit worried about this conviction. And I'm saying, don't worry, Amy, we'll put a successor trustee in place. You can step away from being an MTRXF Ministry Trust trustee. You can step away from being the shareholder of OSN LLC, and I'll find somebody else. It won't be a problem. Just give us about 10 days and we'll get that organised. Then you get David Aarist, who starts to behave very bizarrely, who's being very aggressive towards Sean Benny, the operations manager, like really aggressive on some messages, unnecessarily so. And then David resigns. And then David Aarist basically locks everybody out of the London office where we were doing our notices and paperwork and printing, and there's about 10 guys in that office in London. And it's David's office because I can't rent an office in the United Kingdom with Order 34, 2023. So David had rented an office under his company and he was subletting it to Matrix Freedom, private members, basically. And David's not paying for the office. The revenues coming into the corporations are paying for the office. But David's locked the door, changed the locks, locked everybody out, and then is telling me that he'll let people back in the office if I pay him a year's worth of rent in advance on an office that is in his name, and he wants a share of the recoupments. And then if I agree, he will unlock the office and let all the staff in that office back in. And I said, no, David, why would you, what entitles you to a share of the recoupments? What have you done for them? What happens if every member of the team, all 60 contractors, say, hey, Iain, I'll have a share as well? What am I going to tell the members? I have to pay all the contractors? It's ridiculous. So I said no.
And I asked you off air, if you had that recorded in a document, and you do, don't you? So
yeah, there's a document and there's a message from David on Signal, and there's a document, and basically he's trying to blackmail me and leverage me into opening the office, but only if I give him a share of the recoupments. Well, then the next thing that happens is that Amy Sanger closes the access to all of the bank accounts. There's not numerous bank accounts in the gold and silver reserve, and she's basically taken away all access to the bank accounts from, we have a couple of others that work in the finance area, and they had access to the accounts to receive funds, to pay funds out, all the usual things that you do in finance, and they can't get in. So one of them, Kieran, is calling me early in the morning. Oh my God, I can't get into any of the bank accounts here, and Amy's blocked us from the bank accounts. Now, at the time, I'm thinking, how can she do that? These accounts are under my control. So all I've got to do is go to the banks and reopen the accounts. Amy's already agreed to resign her trustee position. we're in progress of replacing Amy anyway. What's going on? Maybe it's an error. Maybe she's made some error somewhere. But it becomes very, very obvious within about 30 minutes that she's deliberately blocked all of the accounts. We've got access to all of her emails. We can see the emails that she's sending to the banks to block all the access. So it becomes very, very clear very quickly that she's blocked all the bank accounts, which amount to about $1.2 million of funds that were there to pay an overhead north of $250,000 a month of monthly burn rate or overhead costs that we had to find. Now, this is the middle of September, and we've literally got no bank accounts open and no access to any bank accounts. And I've got 60 odd contractors to fund, and all the other costs, all of our IT systems are turned off. All of our licenses for every single system that we use across the whole organization have all been cancelled by Amy. So that's a mobilization, yeah? And I'm trying to contact Amy, who's completely ignoring me. This all happens on a Friday, as it would do. It would always happen on a Friday. And I can't get anything out of Amy. She's blocked all the communication channels, and I can't get to talk with her. Other people tried to call her. She blanks everybody. And that's where we were on the Friday. I sent her a notice that unless she cooperated me by the Monday and told me what was going on and reopened the accounts, that I'd be writing to all the banks, sending official notices to all the banks to basically freeze our access, because it looked to me at the time that she was going to drain all of the funds out and run away with the funds. That's what it looked like to me at the time. So I sent notices to all the banks, there's multiple banks, gold, silver, about what was going on and the fact that I was in control and they should be operating under the trust indenture that I had signed. And I get nothing back from the banks originally because they don't know who I am. Because Amy's fraud, and it is a fraud, was so devious that she'd set it all up under her, but gave me documents like it was under me. That's premeditated, yeah?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So I'm noticing all the banks. Amy's not talking to us. We were able to create very quickly. Certain members helped us out because we do have some very, very loyal members who helped us out with setting up bank accounts under their companies so that we could carry on collecting our donations, subscriptions, pay our contractors, etc., etc. Now, whilst all this is going on, David Ayerist has then set up a website, Matrix Freedom Exposed, full of slander and libelous stuff. Looks very, very similar to Simon Goldberg's type style, very similar style, where apparently David, who'd been with me for 4 years, is now going to reveal that I'm the sort of guy that you wouldn't want to work with, and I'm the fraudster, and everything that's being said about me is true, and you can't trust me, and no one's going to get their recoupments. So how would David know that? David was nothing to do with recoupments.
And just on
David
that,
was,
just on that, and this is what pisses me off really about people that do this sort of stuff, the dishonest people that lack any integrity whatsoever. I was on a call with him only a few weeks before. I think it was only about 2 or 3 weeks before all this kicked off. Talking about the first podcast that I was going to do with yourself, that he was very much involved with, and I'd had calls with him prior to that, and he basically said to me a couple of times, "Yeah, well, I left Matrix Freedom, and the only reason I've come back is because Iain's figured it all out. He's put all the missing pieces in. He's got it absolutely sorted." And I fully believe that Iain's now got the full package to be able to deliver to its members. That's why I've come back. And then all of a sudden, He's saying that you're an absolute scammer and a fraudster.
Mm. So
Interesting.
just to make sense of that, David had left in 2022 for about 6 months, and then he'd come back because he went off to work with Simon Goldberg, Simone Marshall, and some others. That didn't work out too well. And so he came back. And then from 22, 23, 24, I think it was late 22, he came back. That's what he's talking about. He came back because I'd figured out how to get remedy. And he told me that when he came back. And he told me that throughout the next 3 years, as most people internally, if you put them under a lie detector, has Iain figured out how to get remedy? They would say yes, because it's true. But suddenly, David's website, Matrix Freedom Exposed, is saying a complete opposite to that. Can't trust Iain. Nothing he does works. He's a fraudster and a scammer, and you're never going to get your recoupments. But we'll give him a chance. We'll give him until the end of November. And then if you don't get your recoupments, guess what? You can come with David. You can go off with David and he'll get them for you. Now, I'm not going to do a big ego thing here, but let's just have a look at the CVs, right? David Aorist has worked in boiler rooms most of his life, doing sales, selling things that a lot of people probably didn't get a big benefit from, right? With no qualifications that I know of. Quite a good communicator. A lot of people didn't like his style. Some people did, some people didn't. And he's the guy who's going to figure it all out and get you your recoupments, right? And you look at my CV, and I'm not going to big myself up, but I've got letters after my name. I've figured out loads of technical things in the past. I've put this together. I've built an organization with thousands of members all over the world. Who are you going to trust? And I'll let you decide. You can trust me or you can trust David. David doesn't have any track record of doing anything like this. David hasn't got any technical ability to do this. So, who's David working with? Could he be working with the very people that learned how to do the recoupments from me, who no longer are with me? Because David sure as shit isn't going to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's not his skill set. We've all got a skill set, and David and technical ability is not going together very well.
Mm.
And people will tell you that if they know David, that he's not a technician. He's not a technical guy. He even said to me many times, he doesn't understand most of the things, but he trusts me because I do. So David is then set it up so that no, he must know something that everybody else doesn't know, right? And here we go. Here's the next step of the takedown. I call it the hostile takeover of the members, not the hostile takeover of the PMA. No, the hostile takeover of the members. So how are you going to do that, right? So you first of all, the first leg of the strategy is to take away all the reserve, right? And take away the bank accounts. So if you can't operate and you've got no reserve, most organizations will probably fall over pretty quickly. Then you attack the contractors by telling them that they're all under investigation from the FCA because you're expecting most of them to leave, yeah? They're not being paid and they're under investigation, according to David, right? By the way, nobody left. And we paid everybody in September, not the whole amount because we didn't have the funds enough to come. We weren't coming in enough to pay everybody, but we paid everybody what we could. And nobody left, which is interesting. David's little strategy there didn't work too well. So that tells you whether people trust me, doesn't it? If you haven't realised, that's what I'm saying that for. My internal team, nobody left because they trust me, contrary to what David wants everyone to believe.
Yeah.
Then the next leg of the strategy is that you then know that the tax recoupments, the recoupments of bank payments and mortgages are not going to work. Well, how would you know that? That's because you're working with Amy Sanger and her group of trustees, because Amy after she blocked all the bank accounts, then told all the trustees that if they carried on working with the PMA, Matrix Freedom PMA, and me, they would all go to jail. Because Iain's been convicted in the UK, Iain Clifford stamped the body corporate. This is the weaponisation of Order 34 and the fake conviction. Apparently, according to Amy Sanger, and I've had this from 2 trustees firsthand, exactly what she said, if they carried on being a trustee for the Matrix Freedom members, they would go to jail because they're aiding and abetting Iain, and Iain Clifford stamp is a convicted criminal. So what do all the trustees do? They all resign. I write to them all and invite them all to a meeting, and only one of them turns up out of 35. So Amy was pretty convincing, yeah? But she had the relationship with them, I didn't. She was having a weekly meeting with them ever since January of 2025. I didn't know them that well. In fact, I only met them once on one Zoom meeting. Amy was their leader, if you like. Then what you find out is that all of the recruitment filings have been scuppered temporarily, undermined temporarily, because someone, could be Amy, could be all the trustees, has filed with the IRS that their identity is being used in fraud. So having signed agreements as trustees, every single trust is properly set up with proper signed agreements, with full transparency of the trustee and an indenture for every trust. Suddenly, those trustees have all filed. Someone has filed with every single recoupment that we're doing that the trustee's identity has been stolen. So what does the IRS do? They put every single recoupment on hold because they're not going to progress it if there is an impersonation fraud report sent to them for every single trust. So whilst that's going on, which David would know about because he's talking with Amy, he's telling anyone who wants to listen, we'll give Iain until the end of November. And if he doesn't deliver, then you come with me and I'll give you a better deal. Because Amy and her associates presumably think they can take over all of the filings that are already in progress. That's what they believe, but they can't do that for 2 reasons. Because the head of the tax filing is a guy that I know extremely well, who's got a great deal of respect for me. And all of the filings are done under his tax filing license. And he's not going to work with David Ayerist or Amy Sanger. He's appalled by what they have done. So if you don't have the license to change all of the filings over to a new group that's going to run all the admin and do all the trust work, it's not going to happen. So that's the first reason. And the second reason is that it is the members who have control of the individual trusts. And they've all signed agreements that they won't compete with anybody else who's offering a similar service. So this is contractual obligations, right? There are, this is why the contracts exist. So every single member who is a grantor of the trust has signed an agreement that says that they will not work with a competitor for 10 years. I did that deliberately because I didn't want what's happening now to happen, to give a competitor who might learn about how to do this opportunity to try and recruit our members and prize them away because they're greedy. So if any member thinks that they can go off with David, they have a contractual problem, which is they've signed a trust indenture that says they will not do that. So there's 2 reasons why their plan can't work in the law. It can't work in the law, and it can't work because the head of the tax filing, who's got the tax filing license, is not going to play that game. Now, he was expecting his recoupments, which are very substantial. So he is not happy about this at all.
No. No.
So you see, that's what's been going on. And David Ayerist has then got another problem in that before David left, the same as Amy Sanger, they both downloaded confidential data from our platform. So David Ayerist has got all of the membership contact details, phone numbers, email addresses, and data that belongs to the tax filing office, confidential data. David's got it because he's downloaded it, because you have to have certain people in your organization that could download things. Well, Amy had the ability to download that data because she's the head of that department. She can't work with all that data without having access to it. And David's got access to all of the membership contact details. So David's been firing out emails, WhatsApp messages to the members, telling them that, you're never going to get anything with Iain. He's a fraudster. Come to his website, come into his Telegram channel and learn the truth about what's going on, right?
Interestingly, I never got a message from David.
No, my sister did, because he doesn't know that Chris is my sister. So she did, which was interesting. And some of the internal team members didn't get an email from David either, because he obviously knows who they are. But nearly everybody else has had an email, has had a WhatsApp message as well. So you see, that's a problem, because not that I want to use legislation, but there is data protection going on here. There is a breach of data here, and it's quite serious breach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, David said recently, and I've got it recorded and I've got the video of him saying it, that apparently Iain can't do anything about that data breach because he's a convicted criminal, right? Well, that's a bit of an interesting thing to say, David, but I know you're going to watch this. Where in Order 34, 2023, does it say that I can't file a report of a data breach for the members, by the way, not for me, on behalf of the members, who could each file one themselves if they wanted to? We could have thousands of data breach reports going in from every one of the members. Do you think Order 34, 2023 constrains the members from filing a data breach report? I don't think so, David, if you're going to watch this. So you better be a bit worried, man, because it's a bit of a serious problem. And I don't want to cause you any harm or anybody else, but what you're doing is you're affecting thousands of people's futures.
Yeah.
Will it stop them getting their recoupments? No. Will they get them when they should have got them? No. So the very people that apparently I am defrauding, David and Amy, have caused them distress through not getting their recoupments in time. Now, I'll ask you, Mel, what would you be doing if you had your recoupment in mid-November? What would you do with it? It'd be quite helpful, wouldn't it?
Oh, it would be incredibly helpful right now. I am running on a very thin line. So I was just like, oh my God, thank God, because I have had my tax transcript. And yeah, absolutely. Me and my brother, because it affects my brother as well.
I mean, there are thousands of people here in need, really in need of it.
Yeah.
And they've been banking on it. They've been like, we really need this in. On my webinars, so many of my members are saying, Iain, when this comes in, it's going to change our lives. You can't believe the amount of stress we're under.
Yeah.
So to scupper that, to try and shut us down, to scupper all those people. I'm not worried about me. I've got big, broad shoulders, right? But it's not me that is being damaged here. It's the members that have been damaged by this. And our team internally, they are incensed by this. They cannot believe that Amy would do this. They can kind of believe that David would do it because he's a bit of an opportunist, right?
Mm.
But they cannot believe that Amy would do this and destroy people's ability to get themselves out of difficult positions that are in. Not destroy it because it's just been delayed, but it's still, you're scuppering people's hopes. And that is a very negative thing to do. I don't care who you are. If you don't think that's negative, then I don't know what you think. I can't understand how you think.
So what do you think? Because obviously there's a lot gone on there, and I knew some of it because you've been helping me with something else. And what do you think? And I know it's an unknown. It's unknown. Like you've never dealt with this before. Um, but people were going to start getting their payments in November, me included. You've now got to unpick and also make the IRS see that it isn't as it's been presented to them. It's in fact the complete opposite. Have you got any
Yeah,
ideas?
we've already done that. So we've sent off hundreds of instructions to the IRS with a new package of documents that evidences that the this report that's been sent in is bogus. A new trustee's been appointed. We have all the powers to do that. The tax filing, the head of tax filing, the guy with the license is fully behind it all. So, it's just a question of replacing the original trustees with a new trustee, not 35, one trustee. So we've actually streamlined it so that we can get the banking under one trust rather than 35 trustees getting 3,000 bank accounts, because that's quite a big job, yeah? You think about that, 3,000 bank accounts, 35 trustees, it's got a lot to do. So
Yeah.
you have one trust account and numerous bank accounts within that one trust account, but it's all centrally controlled. I've reorganized it so that there's lots of checks and balances. There's no way anybody can just run away with the funds. I've brought in a very professional structure to protect those recoupments when they come in. And then what we'll be offering to all of the members is a way to extract those funds. And that's the bit I wanted to talk about next, because a lot of the members have said, yeah, but when we get our recoupments, how are we going to receive them? And 3 weeks ago, I did a webinar on the what I believe is the a very elegant solution to the digital ID problem. So if you think about digital ID, it's all about basically constraining the body corporate.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, that, and the other, you step out of line, you don't behave in the way that they want you to through the social score, which is where it's going. What can they do? They can constrain your banking, yeah?
Yeah.
They can already do it now. They've already done it to me. They've done it to lots of people around the world. So we know that's what they're going to do, right? They're going to control people through their banking. Well, if you know that the bank account is in their name because it's their body corporate on their monopoly board, they can get away with it, yeah? So my solution is simple. You set up an international trust and you put that on the monopoly board and you get all your banking under that trust. You can move your business in there, you can move your property in there, you can move all assets in there under international trust. And that trust doesn't have to comply with digital ID. So you become the trustee of the trust. When I say you become it, the body corporate becomes the trustee. The living man, woman is the beneficiary. But that international trust is international. There is no digital ID law that can control it. So by shifting all the banking into the trust, then you can receive the recoupments in the trust. And the body corporate bank accounts can't now be used as a weapon because you're not using them anymore. And if you want to get fee simple title over property, so this is what I presented to the farmers. If you want to take your land off the monopoly board and bring it under your trust control, then pay off all your debts, get rid of all your debt, which you can do with our protocols, and then take the fee simple title away from the Crown and put it in your international trust. Now the Crown can't come on your land because it's your trust land, not their land. At the moment, it's their land because it's registered to them. And their legislation is going to prevail because it's their land. So you take that land out of their registration and put it in your trust, and now it's the trust land. So you can put a fence all around it and say, if you come on this land, you're trespassing. And you can genuinely do that because it would be the trust's land. And then no legislation applies on that land. So I presented this to the farmers through a webinar recently. I've had an interview. I've talked all about it. It's an elegant solution. And it's not that difficult to do it if you know how to set the international trust up. It's not a statutory trust. It's not, you don't go to your lawyer and say, oh, I want an international trust, because they won't be able to set this up. Because statutory trusts have to report what's in the trust. This is a private international trust where nothing is reported. There's no reporting at all. And there are banks who set these accounts up. It's actually an opportunity for banks to set these types of accounts up. So for those who want to get their recoupments and then use that international trust account or accounts, spend, recoup, spend, recoup, spend, recoup, they can do that outside of the threat of digital ID and bring all their assets in and have them all protected. So that's the silver lining.
Yeah, yeah. That's what
if you
everybody
like,
wants.
that's what everybody wants. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you still want to go to war with the Crown, crack on, have a go. You'll learn the hard way. But you have to be smarter than them in order to avoid that and go to peace. That's all I'm going to say. Try and go to peace. It's a lot. You sleep a lot better when you're when you're peaceful. By the way.
Yeah.
Now, people have said to me, "What are you going to do about David Ayeris? What are you going to do about Amy?" I don't want to go to war with these guys. I really don't. I just want to get the reserve back. And right now, there's an opportunity for Amy to just surrender because she's got no standing in the law to keep these funds. There's so much evidence against her, and she could go to jail. If I really wanted to go down that pathway, I could send her to jail. I don't want to do that. David Ayeris, he could go to jail for using all the data that doesn't belong to him. I don't want to send David to jail either. I just want them to walk away and stop this plan. Let us carry on with what we were doing. And we've been doing this for years. I'm on it 7 days a week. It's my passion. And these people have fucked it. But they're not going to win because they can't win this. There's too much light. There's too much truth. There's too much positive energy behind us for them to win. This darkness is definitely not going to win this battle. No way.
No.
But not because I'm going to go to war with them, just because I'll bring the truth into the equation. And the truth is going to win this.
Absolutely. And I'm very aware of your time right now. You're supposed to be somewhere else. So I think how you just finished was perfect. Truth is going to win this. And I totally agree. It's going to be a pain in the ass because it's going to drag things out a bit, but you are going to get there. Well,
Thanks, Val.
yeah, thank you, Iain. I know you've got to jump on to another one, but it's been enlightening, incredibly valuable to understand in more detail what you and the team there are having to deal with on a daily basis, and also, the jeopardy that a small number of people have put into the equation for thousands of people that are finally expecting our recoupments, and yeah, I'm not going to drag this out. It's just unbelievable knowing that David's been with you for 4 years and what you've done for him on a personal level and the bullshit that he span out to us, the members. Iain knows it all. He knows everything. That's why I'm here. And then he's just done this. It's quite incredible. Quite incredible. But thank you again. This is going to go up really quickly. So this story needs to be told. And when the movie rights come in, I'd like to be have a little cameo if that's all right.
It would be another chapter of The Disruptor. I've got a documentary called The Disruptor, and it's going to be the 12th chapter because it's chapters through the last 15 years. So I think this one qualifies for a chapter on its own, I think.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Ian. Take care.
Bye for now.